Right. Admit all. There we go. There we go. Hello and welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome, everybody. Hi, it's great to see you. Thanks so much for coming. Welcome to Zenful Conversations, where we come just as we are to listen, reflect, and hold space for the sacred stories that live in each of us. In this episode, I'm honored to sit with Julie Barton, a writer of immense heart, depth, and presence. Julie is the author of the bestseller memoir, Dog Medicine: How My Dog Saved Me from Myself, a book that has touched hearts around the world with its courageous honesty and deeply healing message. It's a story of falling apart and being saved, not by a therapist or medication, but by a golden retriever named Bunker. Julie holds an MFA in writing from Vermont College of Fine Arts, and her work has appeared in the Huffington Post, Brainchild, Louisiana Literature, and beyond. She's a devoted poet, writing a poem every single day on Substack with her Out with Lanterns, a practice that feels like a devotion to presence and to truth. And she's the founder of the Write Club, which is described as a sacred space to uncover your truth, write with courage, and share without judgment. It's a space where she invites writers of all backgrounds to gather in authenticity, reflection, and shared creative exploration. In this conversation, we'll explore the divine mystery of animals. We'll talk about the quiet power of daily poetry, the sacredness of storytelling, and the way writing can become a gentle path home to the self. Julie, your heart, your words, and your presence are such a gift. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. It's so lovely.
Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah, so, these last couple episodes, I've been leaving a lot looser in my plan. Been leaving a bit more room for mystery and magic, and I rather like it. So, we do have a lot to cover today. We've got the book we want to talk about. And I'll tell you, I read this book and it got a little bit tough at some points for me. It was a little bit tough.
Yeah. Well, tell me
And
about it. I'm actually curious. Just
very powerful. Say it again.
what was difficult, if you don't mind sharing?
Um,
And you don't have to share.
well, going through, well, first, there's no question in my mind what I would have done the same. There's no way I would have put my dog down. But well, the conversation's really wrapped around mental health.
Yeah.
And I got to be careful. um, Letting myself go down so low to where I feel things, and it's a process for me. So
Mhm.
I just had to put it down, breathe a
Yeah.
little bit, and come
Yeah.
back to it, and breathe a little bit and come back to it.
Yeah. I hear that
How
a lot.
about I just let you talk then about it, and unless you want me to, I'll just
I'm happy to talk about it.
yeah, talk about
Yeah.
it,
I'll
and then
get going.
I'll butt in
You
where
can,
and
you
when
can butt in. That's
I
totally
can
great.
butt in.
Great. Yeah, so I did not set out to be a memoirist, and I set out to be a novelist. I have an MFA in fiction writing, and I tried to write Dog Medicine as a novel. Kind of, it was loosely based on it, and that was sort of my practice book that I put in a drawer. And after I graduated from the MFA, I was pregnant when I started it, so I don't know what I was thinking. Um, but I realized probably 8 years later that I had to write it as the truth. which was really quite frightening to think, okay, well, I'm just going to put it all out there for everybody to see. But, you know, the story, I mean, should I explain what the story is? I'm happy to. Okay. So it's the story of essentially kind of like my 22nd, 23rd year of life. When it starts out with this massive mental breakdown I had at age 22. I was living in New York City. I was trying to make ends meet as a just graduated from college kid, and I was heartbroken, and I didn't realize I had complex PTSD because that probably wasn't even a thing then. And I just collapsed with depression. I was trying very, very hard to hang on, and I finally one day just couldn't hang on. And so I went home, and my mom, I'm from Ohio originally, so my mom drove and picked me up, drove me home. And there they kind of tried to figure out what was going on. It was 1996. And, you know, the mental health conversation then was not robust. People were not talking about, you know, depression, anxiety, that kind of thing. It was just like, buck up, get it together, you know, we remember. And so when I was diagnosed with depression, it was pretty scary because I had never heard of anybody being diagnosed with anything. And you know, I started to sink pretty bad. And then, you know, my parents got me to therapists and they tried, you know, we tried medication. And the one thing I thought, I kept sort of sinking low. And the one thing I thought that was sort of hopeful was like, what if I get my own puppy? And that was an insane idea because I had no job, no house, no idea where I was going to be, what I was doing. But all my life, in my youth, in my young years, I was the person who gravitated towards the pet and really felt super connected and communicated with animals in the natural world. And I had a tree that I spoke to as a little girl, and I was just very, very spiritual before I knew what that was. So I thought I think I'm going to try to get a puppy. And my mother, bless her heart, said, okay, which is also a crazy thing to do because, you know, who knew where I was going to be. So then,
I just want to stop for a second here.
yeah,
That when you were waiting for your mom
yeah.
to come get you was a real powerful, to me, waiting for your mom was sounded
Well,
like it was very challenging for you when
yeah,
you were waiting for her back when she
yeah.
was coming to pick you up.
Yeah, she was a teacher and I called her at school and you couldn't get a hold of, you know, the teacher into the classroom. So they had to find her. And then she realized right away there was something wrong. And so she jumped in the car and drove overnight, came and got me. It's like at night.
Yeah, it's a good break. It's a real good book. It's very powerful, very powerful. Okay, please continue.
Anyway, long story, short version of the long story is that the first morning we got this dog, and the first morning I brought him home, and that morning I woke up with him next to me in the crate next to my bed. It was the first morning of my life that I woke up um, with a shred of hope. It was the first morning I woke up and I didn't feel dread. And that was a miracle, felt like. And then what started happening was that he would start to notice when I would start to sink, and he would just come over to me and lean on me, or just he just noticed. You know, he wasn't saying anything. He wasn't, you know, saying what's wrong or asking me to explain my feelings. He was just coming over and being with me and being present with me. And at that age, when I didn't trust people anymore, I had there's a lot of family stuff in the book. There's a lot of really difficult family dynamics going on. And I didn't trust or like people, and I most certainly didn't trust or like myself. But I did trust animals because I had a sense that they had this pure understanding of good, and that this dog really, really seemed to see me. And I believed that he did. I decided to believe that he did. That saved my life because um, I decided to rely on him in a way that I'd never trusted I could rely on anybody. And um, it it worked to give me this sort of stable grounding that I needed to try again in life. And then the rest of the book is me trying again and things happening and things going well and things going very, very badly and potentially catastrophically. And so um, it's just the story, the magic that happened for me with him. It was a relationship that, I tell people now, I'm not afraid to tell people now that this dog was my soulmate. And my husband knows. um, but there was something incredible about our connection. And I've had 4 dogs since him, and they're wonderful. And this is Sunny. She's wonderful, but she's not Bunker. And he changed my life. He reached me at a time that I really, really needed unconditional love. And he was like a Buddha in his wisdom. And the day after he died, I woke up that morning for the first time having to wake up without him for 11 years. And I thought, I don't know how I'm going to do this. And I went to my computer and I had sort of given up on writing. And because I had 2 really young, I was pregnant with my second kid and I had a 2.5-year-old. And I found out that morning that I was a finalist in a fiction contest that I'd forgotten that I entered. And it was this moment of like, oh, wow, maybe I should keep trying. And then I heard his voice and he said, tell our story. And I have yet to hear from him again or dream about him again, but I decided to honor that request, that I would tell our story. And it was really quite challenging to write, really, really challenging. It took me probably 8 years. And much of that time I spent going, what am I doing? Why am I writing this book about how my beloved is a dog? And, I'm just going to end up sounding crazy. Um, and then, I wrote what was truest, what was most vulnerable. And it turned out that that resonated with a lot of people. And it became a New York Times bestseller, and it's been translated into 9 languages around the world. And I get messages every day from readers. So,
Wow.
and now that's the dog medicine story. And now I struggle with just my regular writing practice. What am I going to do now? What am I doing next? I'm trying to write a book that's sort of a sequel memoir, which is really, really challenging. It's essentially the story of writing the book and how challenging that was, and all of the magic that came along, all of the signs from wherever, from Bunker, from the universe, I don't know, that I should keep trying. And yeah, so that's the gist of it.
The vulnerability is amazing. But yeah, you're still doing it with your poetry and the daily poems you send out into the world, which some of them are pretty darn powerful. Uh, Before I got the book, I learned of you and read your poetry I'm a yoga therapist, and some of my yoga teachings I read poetry, and I read one, actually Joanne Snyder asked for this one here, How to Love the World. I read,
Mhm.
and when I was reading the book, I noticed that as a child you talked to the trees. That was on page 25 there, and you talked about how your best friend tree was a century-old beech named Alice, and you talked about um, she was like your great grandma, and she loved you most of all. And then this poem made sense to me because you talked about it. Do you have that with you by any
Yeah.
chance?
How to
If
Love the
you
World.
would you read that one, please? That's so lovely.
Sure.
How to Love the World by Julie
Yeah.
Barton.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. I love the world. A flowering dogwood once told me she loved the world. Her wild exuberance convinced me I was not imagining this. She wanted me to love the world too, so I sat down, closed my eyes, leaned against her trunk, and asked her to please tell me how. She radiated love and said, "This is all for you. All this beauty, this air, this water, this wind, this sun, this listening." Deep breath. She told me the ducks were hers and that she was their mother. I was safe with her, I knew. And after I stayed for a long while, focused on my breath, in, out, feeling deeper into what she said, I heard two young men walking by. "Look," one of them said, "it's the fucking duck whisperer." Later, when I opened my eyes, I saw four ducks had tucked themselves in, afternoon napped at their mother's roots, mere inches from my folded legs. Beaks and wings, no fear. I'd become one of the tree's children that day too, so of course I acquiesced. "Love," I whispered, and she replied, "Yes, love." And that is a true story. Yeah.
Yeah, I really love that that poem very much. We're a bunch of tree lovers around here. Does
Mhm.
anybody happen to have the book and have any questions? I'm not sure anybody got the book yet, but does anybody have any questions that they'd like to ask Julie before we continue? All righty. About one more poem that I had on my mind, and then I'll let you
Sure thing.
take it from there. Listening. I love listening. I like to read each line slowly and pause after each line.
All right, I'll try to read it like that. Listening. I rebuilt my ancestral altar, and 2 nights later, two great horned owls stood near my front door. I knew they were my grandparents who lingered. They said in the next morning's meditation, "Where we are, masculine and feminine don't exist." I heard it like an apology. We are all just energy here. I heard we had it so wrong. It's just love. I replied, "That's what the trees say too." I inhaled with my still warm body, asked for guidance. "Let go," they said. "Keep going, right with your eyes closed."
Mm,
Mhm.
thank
That's
you.
also a true story. That was the most amazing thing. I had this big, huge ancestral altar right here next to my writing desk. And then I was really struggling with stuff, and this woman that I work with was like, "You need to take that down. You have too many spirits watching you, and it's getting in your way." So I did. And then I had it down for 6 months or so, and I put up a different one over there that was just a little smaller with sort of like some more just main character players kind of in it. And then 2 nights later, I have a video of it, of two great horned owls on the wire outside my house, preening each other and calling to each other. I've never seen two owls together, and they sat there for a while looking around and looking at each other and picking at each other, and then they flew away. And I knew right then that that was like, when you have those moments where um you just know something, and I knew right then that's my grandparents and they're here because my grandmother recently passed away. Um, so yeah, it's really beautiful.
Yeah, I do love that. What did you want to say when you came on here today?
Me?
Hmm.
What do I want to say?
Yeah.
Well, I want to say, I think, that we are one being. We are one. There's so much division right now. There's so much heartache. There's so much anger, and I feel like when we die, we become energy, and we are we are all one big energetic field. And I feel like we need to remember that while we're here. That's pretty lofty. Geesh. Um, the other thing is just, with writing, and, I don't know how many writers are here, but, um, I know Amrita's a writer and Greg's a writer. Hi, guys. It's so lovely to see you. Um, you know, Talking about the challenges, the um, breakthroughs, the highs and lows. I'm always welcoming people talking about that. And then also the practice of writing a poem a day is really interesting and challenging. I've been doing it for a year, 14 months maybe. I started posting in August, so I don't know how long ago that was. I just posted my 250th poem today, and it feels kind of crazy to do, kind of dumb, kind of like a terrible idea, but also really, really freeing in a way because there's no gatekeeper. I just get to put these drafts out in the world, and keep myself going. I usually write them right before I fall asleep when my sensor's off. I'm lying in bed. My husband falls asleep in 2 seconds. It takes me about 2 hours. So I'll lie there and just sort of, a lot of times I do write with my eyes closed. And I trust my associations, which is what Billy Collins said in his master class was, when you're writing a poem and some random image comes in, trust it, use it, because there's a reason that it just came in and there's a reason that it's connected. And, put it down, even if it makes absolutely no sense. And a lot of times I'll read I wake up in the morning and I look forward to being like, what did I write about? And half the time I don't remember. I'm like, oh, right. When I read it again, I'm like, oh, right. I wrote about that Christmas. Just recently I wrote about um, the Christmas of 1985, random. But it's in all of us, if, however your writing practice serves you, I think is worth dedicating time to. It's just sort of it's like a meditation practice. It's looking inward and saying, what is here and having no judgment about it. There's nothing wrong or right about it. You're just curious. Isn't that interesting that that showed up today? Isn't it interesting that this poem I wrote was about how cell phones are ruining family, but it was also about the Christmas of 1985, and the amount of time we spend on our phone now versus the amount of time we used to spend face to face, but it was about singing Silent Night around the table and random. When did that come up? But I think it's in all of us, the capacity to do that. And a lot of writing really just comes down to practice, repetition, and just reading and reading and reading and reading. And also being vulnerable and trusting that what you put out there will reach someone. When I wrote Dog Medicine, I remember thinking, no one's going to want to read this. This is going to, what am I, but I thought, well, my kids will have it. And my goal was, I had this idea of there's one person out there, and she was a young woman who was struggling the way I was, who needed to hear this story and needed some hope. And, and needed to see the grit of it, to know that it's not all pretty for everybody, that life is really hard. And, especially now with, the way we gloss over things in, on the internet, people think that everyone else has it together, and nobody does. And so I thought, well, if there's one person out there that this reaches, I will have been successful. And that was a really smart way to do it, because I didn't get overwhelmed with, well, who's this for? Who's my audience? And will it be anything? And will it go anywhere? Because you can't write with that in mind. That'll just block you. And I say that from very recent personal experience. You can't write for other people. It has to be for, what's in you. So, yeah, it just, going inward, paying attention. One of the greatest gifts we can give others and ourselves is deep attention. You know, what is here? And when someone that you love walks in the room, smile. I do that with my kids, and
Mm.
you know, it's the subtlest thing, but I think they notice that mom's happy to see me. Um, and I do it with my husband too. Sometimes I forget with him.
So the dog medicine, what year was that you did that?
It came
Wrote
out in
that?
2016. So almost it was
2016.
9 years ago.
So that was you kind of purged that, but the poetry is your continuation of healing, right? I mean, more or less the writing, the
Yeah,
writing.
yeah, but it is, and yeah, it is, and it's a way to stay, it's a way to keep making art. It's a way to stay well. The writing practice that I teach, the Write Club, is also a really wonderful writing practice where we generate, you know, we write by hand, online and in person, and we, you know, write whatever comes, no judgment. And then I like I said, I am working on the next book. It's just really, it's really been a struggle, and um, you know, I think it's hard once you have a success to follow it up. So I'm struggling with that, but I mean, it's 3/4 of the way done. I just still don't like it. I still don't think it's good.
Mm,
Or it's
mm,
not quite there. The end isn't ready. But maybe it'll come out someday. But also I can't, you know, that it's very important, I think, to not have attachment to outcome when you're an artist, to not have attachment to how something does. And the daily poetry practice is really an exercise in that, because I am always surprised at the poems that take off and the ones that don't, because I'm always wrong. I'm always wrong. I think that someone's gonna love that. Everyone's gonna love this one. This one's gonna, nope. And it helps me just, you know, non-attachment. Put it out there. Maybe it'll be somebody's favorite. Maybe it'll be they hate it. And it's none of my business, right? The attachment to the outcome and to the achievement of, you know, you may have had this best-selling book and now you're this and now you're, you know, important. You can't attach yourself to that, because it'll mess you up. So I just try to keep my practice small, and as sort of like productive and uh, serving me in a way that is good for me, so that I just keep sort of making, you know, and then by the time I've written 400 poems since last March, which if you'd asked me, you know, 2 years ago, the last poem I'd written was, and I've had like 4 or 5 poems published back in the paper days when I first started in my MFA. But I hadn't really written many poems in a while. But I was really inspired by writers like Maggie Smith, and um, you know, I love Naomi Shihab Nye and Kate Baer and all these poets that are really making poetry accessible. And I think there's something about our short attention span now that makes poetry accessible to more people. Um,
mm.
and there's something really satisfying about the twist in a poem. Something comes that you're not expecting, and the process of making them is quite fun, and challenging. I know we've got some poets here, so yeah.
Yeah. I definitely believe it's a very healing process. I've intuitively guided to it, to writing, and I've yet to find my voice on the page, but I do know that I found my people.
Mm, mhm.
Um, so it's very comforting, just the loving environment, the truth, the authenticity, the you know the it's such a real world in these communities, these writing communities.
Yeah,
But I
I
do
don't,
believe it to be the next step on my healing journey.
Amazing. Yeah. Well, keep going. You should come to Write Club. You know, in Write Club, what we do is we use poetry as prompts, and we take lines, and if we have time in our hour here, we're already halfway there. But you know, we use a poem and we take a line from it, and you write by hand, and you just riff. You just write as fast as possible, and you do not judge. You don't go back and erase. You just keep the pen moving. You write as poorly and as quickly as possible. And there's something that happens, and if you try this on your own, you may notice that something will start to come in. That's sort of like I was saying earlier, these associations, something will start to come in, and you just say yes to it. It's a practice of saying yes to what your subconscious is serving you, which you'll notice if you're doing, if you're a Zen practitioner, if you're meditating, things will come in, and you can notice, just noticing. It's the same thing where you're just writing it down. And a lot of dog medicine came out of that exact practice, and a lot of the poems do as well. And it's just, one line from a poem. Like today um, we used some poems from, let's see, Susan Wood wrote one called, oh gosh, can I remember it? It's called Daily Life. And the line was, it just keeps going on and on. That was it. Just it keeps going on and on, just keeps going, and you just keep repeating that and see what comes. There's nothing, we all, I think, school and, like I believe in school, I believe in education, absolutely. But there's some kind of disservice that happens with writing, and especially primary school and high school, where we're told there's a right way to write it, there's a right structure, there's a right way, and there's a wrong way, and you have to do it right or you're going to be wrong, right? And that really freezes, I see it with my kids, that freezes a lot of people. And you have to have the basics down, obviously, so it's understandable, and you have to know basic grammar and things like that. But like, there is some real disservice done to killing the flow when you're writing these, when you're learning to write papers, and you're learning to write something that's sort of a little more academic. So I really try to reteach that sort of meditative flow in a writing practice. And people keep coming back. I'm doing it for 10 years.
It's wonderful. I just want to be sure you saw Rachel said, lovely story and poems. The relationship with the trees resonates. Also, a squirrel jumping in my lap while meditating. Owls showing up on a telephone pole outside my window.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
It's
yeah.
amazing, isn't it? It's really, again, it's about attention. Because so many people, I'll walk around, and my family's always laughing at me because I'm like, oh my God, look, a hawk. Oh wow, look over here. And they're like, oh my God, watch the ground. I'm like, no, no, let's notice the sky, notice the sounds, notice the birds, and often I have found, and that's a lot of what the second book is about, is that when I needed to be paying attention to a thought, or to what was going on, or to what was happening, that is the moment I would find a feather on the ground, hear a hawk above me, hear an owl calling. And it made me really understand this wholeness that I was sort of trying to get to with that whole energy thing. That, it may just sound crazy woo, and maybe it is, but also it helps me feel that we are all connected. This is all one big collective consciousness, and it's our job to help raise each other up, and and witness. That's one of the best things about the writing practice. Is what we do is we write down, scribble for 15 minutes, and then we read it aloud to each other immediately. And there's no commentary, there's no I liked this, or what did you mean by that? There's none of that. It's just thank you, and we witness, and we go to the next person. Sometimes people are bawling their eyes out, and still we go thank you, we move to the next person. And it's one of the really, being seen that way in a safe space is really invaluable. you know?
It feels good to cleanse like that. Honestly, I find it cleansing
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Because I'm shocked half the time what comes out when I write.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. You know, and what's there, you're like, oh wow. And I
Yeah.
get that a lot. I mean, people read my book and they go, wow, that's really an intense story. And a lot of people initially have to put it down. I get a lot of messages saying I had to pull over on the freeway at the end. They're listening to the audiobook and they had to pull over because they're crying at the end. And I think that that's fabulous because
Yeah, I was shocked how powerful it was. I truly was. I was taken aback. I was like, "Ooh, I'm gonna put
yeah,
this down." Uh,
yeah. Yeah,
uh,
there's a beauty and intensity for me. Sometimes you don't want it, and I respect that. Sometimes you don't really want to read something intense. But other times, I mean, for me, the most healing stories have been the ones where I think I can't believe they survived that.
it was so true. I could feel the true descent. I felt it, you know. So yeah, so this was one of the questions. Writing can soothe, but it could also stir.
Mm.
And so I was wondering, how do you tend to yourself? Because some of these daily poems I can still see. I'm like, oh, she's struggling with today, you know? Uh,
Mhm.
um, so when writing brings up grief or memories that ache, do you have like rituals or practices that help you ground, or what do you do?
Well, I do a lot of grounding, a lot of meditation. I run every morning with my dog, which is really, really good for me and helpful. Um, but also the writing itself, the putting it down is a getting it out of me, right? And putting it down is clarifying it. Um, and I don't know anybody who doesn't struggle, you know? The idea that, we're gonna post or write things that are here's my advice for all of life, or here's how nobody wants to read this was my fabulous day poem and my life is so great and don't you wish you were me, nobody wants to read that. And if anything, I think people want to understand um that there's sorrow and they're not alone in their grief, in their confusion, in their rage, in their joy. So I let them all in. I let everything in. And like, just this last week, I was really in a weird funk. I could not figure it out. Today is the first day I feel a little better. And it's not like massive, depression like I had, but there are bad times and good times. And sometimes it's just a growth period and you feel funky and you can't figure it out. And yeah. So
Um, let's see here. Linda, do you have anything you'd like to say before you gotta leave, honey? You're on mute. Still on mute.
Can you hear me
There you
now?
go.
there we
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm so
go.
sorry. So, what I had said to Jen, and I think Jen kind of knows this a little bit about me because I do write and I write poetry and I write stories and I'm working on a memoir. But
Mm.
what you said about that early education thing is just so true for me because I've even written about it. I had a teacher traumatize me so hard in probably fourth or fifth grade that I swore that I was the worst person in the world, not just the worst writer in the world, but the worst person in the world.
Mm.
And
Uh,
so for me to come out of that shell
yeah, it's huge.
has taken decades,
Yeah.
you know. So
Yeah.
anyway, I got to sign off because unfortunately, this not unfortunately, my daughter from California is here and I got to go
Okay.
and take her, do the family thing last night. But I wondered, what is your Substack's name? Because I
Just
would like
Julie.
to follow you.
Yeah.
Is
Thank
this your
you.
name?
It's just juliebarton.substack.com. You'll
I'll
see
be able to find
it.
that easily.
It's called Out with
Yeah.
Lanterns.
What's it
And
called?
I will send it tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Out with
And
lanterns.
yeah.
Out with lanterns.
Okay.
Um, But I will send out all her contact information along with the replay tomorrow. And you
Okay.
know how to get in touch with me. So
I
if
sure
you
do.
don't get it, you
Okay, I
just let
love
me
it,
know.
Julie, and so thank you. I will
Thank you.
sign off.
Thank you.
And
Lindsay.
smile to your family.
I will. I do that all the time, but I
Enjoy
do
that.
have
I
the
know
same
you do.
problem forgetting with my husband. So you're not alone on that one. Sometimes I do look at him and it's almost a smile. I'm like a here, y'all.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for being here.
Yeah.
She's a very good writer.
Amazing. I hope she
Let me just go ahead and ask if anybody else has any questions. This is a good time to ask that. Does anybody else have any questions they'd like, or comments even, to ask Julie, or anything at all? Okay.
Hi.
Okay, Amrita, go ahead, please.
Oh, sorry.
It's just such a pleasure, Julie, to meet you in Zoom person.
Hi, Amrita. Nice to meet you too. I'm so happy to meet you.
I've been writing a poem a day for 3 years. So I now have like 1,100 poems. I mean, it's just inconceivable to me that that's true, but
Oh, fantastic. Wow.
and I was inspired by Rosemary Watola Trommer, who's been doing it since 2006.
She's amazing.
And I was just with her yesterday. She was here in my town.
Oh.
What a light.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just want to reiterate that yes, it's the most amazing practice because it keeps me noticing all the time.
Yeah.
And I've also written a memoir about a very rough time in my life, and it did not achieve national recognition, but it won some prizes. And
Oh, wow, I gotta find that. What's it called?
I'll let you know.
Well,
It's
tell us
called
all.
It's
Yeah.
called Bound to Love, a memoir of grit and gratitude. And it's about raising my very disabled son.
Wow.
And how I had to deal with the medical establishment.
Yeah.
I've written poems about it too. Yeah. And so thank you for being who you are.
Thank you so
It
much.
means a great deal to me to have met you and to be reading you every day. So
Thank you. Likewise, Amrita. So lovely.
Awesome, wonderful. Thank you so much, Amrita. Joanne.
Oh, hi. I'm Joanne Snyder, and I live in Canada.
Oh, hi. Lucky you.
Yes, that's why I'm saying it. I'm rejoicing more and more. We're having our big election today, but it's good. What I am really appreciating what you have said is from a very young age, I've always lived by signs. And more, and I still live by signs, and I'm a retired English as a second language teacher. And we always used to on Friday afternoon, if they had enough English competency, maybe intermediate, we'd always talk about some special signs. And I learned other cultures just accept it and go with the flow.
Yeah.
I find compared to North American, but sometimes like I meditate and I pray and I sometimes have signs in my dreams, but I just will be walking along and have a sign. And crows, and I've talked to James Cruz about this when I did some workshops with him. Crows always, like you and your owls, possibly, crows to me always seem I live in a city, inner city, and when a crow comes close and clucks, it's like they're saying, Joanne, you'll get through it. You're all right.
Oh my God.
You know
Yeah.
that clucking sound?
Yes.
Crow makes versus a caw. And
Mhm.
I find them brilliant birds and they're a wonderful sign. So just, I guess what I'm saying is thank you very much for validating this because sometimes I've gone through major transitions in 2 years and I still struggle a bit with fear, but I just surrender, kind of release it. I walk a great deal and I just say, show me a sign, X will be all right. And yesterday I found a great big mass of daffodils. And well, I'm in Kingston, Ontario, and daffodils are slowly coming, but we're not at the big mass stage.
Yeah.
So just thank you for that, because it's not something I can talk to about. Very good friends get it, but
Mm.
not everybody gets it. But
Yeah.
I know they are, like, whatever you want to call it, a sign is a special spiritual presence. And I think you're sharing that too. So thank you, Julie.
Of course. Thank you so much. I love that. And I love that crows are like that for you. They are magical. They're ancestral, I always think.
Mhm.
And you know, they have some magic to portend in the
Oh,
most beautiful, loving, wonderful way.
yeah.
And yeah, I I really appreciate that. And I believe that too. And when I first the beginning of this next book, I'll tell you guys the story that
Mm.
I heard from a tree that had been it was a Douglas fir that was huge. The trunk was enormous and it had been cut. And I was hiking and I heard this voice say it was so loud. And I was in the fog. I was hiking in the Berkeley Hills and the redwoods,
Mm.
and I just heard it was so loud, and I didn't understand what it was. And then I ran into the stump, and I realized it was a stump, and I thought, "Oh my God, I'm going crazy." There was a chainsaw mark on the stump,
Mm.
and to me, the tree was saying it was so loud. I've been here for 100 years, and along came this
Oh.
loud thing and took, you know. And then I went to this woman that I started working with on spiritual work and on mental health stuff.
Mm.
And she said to me, okay, I need you to remember, or at least let me ask you this. In indigenous cultures and cultures that are here, you know, millennium before we were, they believed that the trees spoke. The Celts believe, the
Mhm.
Druids, they're, you know, the Druid priests of the Celts believe that trees have um, divine messages to send to us. So, and I was saying to her, I think I'm crazy. I think I'm insane. And she said, okay, so I'm going to ask you this, you know, tell you this about indigenous cultures, that this is what they believe. Do you think they were insane? Do you think they were having mental health problems? No. She said this has been lost in our culture, but it's not lost in the world, in the collective. It's not, it's still here. It's this noticing, right? If we go out and we slow down, slow down, and you know, remember we are just fine the way we are. Just, you know, that there's nothing we need to do in this moment, just what is here. And I bet you're gonna hear a cluck. You know? And that's actually that's what we're here to do. That's what we're here to talk about and to notice and to share. And it helps me feel like I'm not alone. None of us are, you know, we're all part of this big, huge planet. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
definitely I'm a sign chick myself. Joanne, thanks so
I
very
was
much.
just
Did you have
going,
something
yeah, I
else?
worked for 5 years with Indigenous people. The Denitaw, they tend to be in northern Canada, like into the Northwest Territories. I'm not sure, and Cree, I don't know if they are in the States. I just don't know. But anyway, the crow to them is the elders coming back to visit. And I'm sure that's in other First Nations cultures. But I was only 30 when I went up to work with the Indigenous people. It took me a long time to get over the grieving of the poverty and
Mhm.
what was stolen from them by the dominant cultures. Like that affected me for about a year working with them. But and I always insisted on giving them double the money for all their, what they called their crafts. And I said, no, it's art. I said,
Mm.
it's not a craft. But I learned so much and they accepted me in ways I almost felt I didn't deserve it, but I learned. And every summer I traveled because I was at a college and they always said to me, are you coming back? Are you coming back? And I still feel sad. After 6 years, I thought, my time in the North was complete and it was time to go on to the next step. But yeah, crows are, and for years in my life, a crow came very close when someone that was very dear to me died or was dying. Like when my mother died, a crow escorted me into my driveway. Like I was driving, right? And so I love talking about this. And I write by times, but sometimes I dream it more. And then I'm in a dream group and I write it in a dream group. And I do some poetry, but sometimes it doesn't seem poetry is my medium. But I respect poetry. And I think I get the most from reading poetry and what it brings up and commentary to me, kind of thing. So anyway, thank you.
No, thank you,
Namaste.
Joanne. Thank you, Joanne.
Yeah.
Greg,
Yeah,
welcome.
hi. Thank you, Julie, for your commitment,
Thank you.
and Rita too, because I each day I wait for your poems. One day I hope to maybe emulate it by putting out, taking the risk.
Yeah.
Like I do write the occasional poem, but I always feel that they're less than they could be. And to that end, my commitment to you, I guess, is to say that I will try to start the process of publishing more.
Fabulous. Yeah. And
But
that,
it's difficult to overcome that well, I think I mentioned to you before, the confidence thing.
yeah. No, and you are so not alone in that. I have it too. And Amrita's nodding where, we all are our own worst critic. And I think it's a leap of faith to put it out there. And you're ready when you're ready, and it's scary, right? But I love that you are committed to starting to do that, and I will be cheerleading you.
Okay, thank you.
I will.
Beautiful. Thank you. And I'm glad you could log on, Greg. Thanks for
Yeah.
coming. And Rita?
And let me just let everybody know it's Amrita, not Amrita. Amrita, thank you.
Thank you.
Greg, I just want to say to you that William Stafford, who wrote a poem a day, said to people, if you're having trouble writing, lower your standards. And I have that on my desk so I can read it.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that Rosemary Watola Trommer says, it doesn't have to be good, it has to be true. Well, I don't always write good, but I can write true.
Yeah. It's so true, right? Because we know what's true.
That's right.
You get that feeling of like, oh, I have it right now, where it's like, oh, yes, this is true. And that is your job as a writer, is to tell your truth.
Yeah.
And, and like we were talking about, sometimes it's going to be hard. Sometimes it's going to be not pretty. And that's actually fabulous. It's not something to hide or shy away from. It's beautiful to experience the whole gamut of emotions, including doubt, including, being unsure, including sorrow and rage and all of that, So yeah, I love those quotes. Thank you so much for that, Amrita. And thank you for your attention on Substack. You guys are awesome.
For sure. Would you have time to do a little bit of that writing stuff, or is it too lengthy and to do?
Are we going? How long are we going?
Well, that is up to you. I'm okay to stay a few minutes later. I mean, then,
Well, I don't know that we really have time to do it, honestly, because usually it's at least a half hour. And we were doing just an hour, is that right?
Yeah, approximately.
About that, yeah. So I think we don't have time, but you know, maybe what I could do is leave people with a couple of lines that are prompts that I have used recently. I have, I'll pull up, and you can do it with some of the poems I've written too. You know, if you go to listening, you know, you could write from this line. You could just say, let go, you know, and repeat it, right? So you write down, let go. And then you can say, let go of worrying what people think, let go of this, you know, and then that will turn into something else. It will turn into something else. Let's see. Let me see if I can find, there's, I have this file of the poems that I use for Write Club, and like the ones that we use. Like there's a Stephen Dunn poem called The Sacred. And I'll just read this really quickly and, you know, give you a couple lines from it that you can write from. And, you know, the people who are on here, I would love to see what you've written once you do, and you can email it to me. There's a contact form on my website, and you can just email me what you've written. I'll write you back. So I'm just going to read this one. I'm going to put it in the chat too. I'm going to read it once and then I'll put it in the chat, and I'm just going to give you some lines to write from. You could do let go. You could do that if you want, and time yourself, you know, set a timer or look at the clock, write for 10 or 15 minutes and just keep the pen moving. Okay, I'm going to read this to you. The Sacred by Stephen Dunn. After the teacher asked if anyone had a sacred place, and the students fidgeted and shrank in their chairs, the most serious of them all said it was his car, being in it alone, his tape deck playing things he'd chosen. And others knew the truth had been spoken and began speaking about their rooms, their hiding places. But the car kept coming up, the car in motion, music filling it, and sometimes one other person who understood the bright altar of the dashboard and how far away a car could take him from the need to speak or to answer, the key and having a key and putting it in and going, right? So this is a poem about a kid in his car. That's it right there. So these lines I've underlined, you can see in the chat, you know, you can write from the truth had been spoken, you know, a sacred place. You could write from, and when those lines that are underlined, you know, the need to speak, you could just write the need to speak. And then what comes to mind when you see that, what the need to speak is overrated. Sometimes I just want to be quiet. Sometimes I don't want anyone to speak to me, you know, and you can just go on and just keep riffing, keep writing, and whatever comes is right. That's what I'm talking about with this practice of saying yes, because your body knows, your intuition, your subconscious knows what's right and what's true, and it knows what wants to come. And when you feel yourself thinking, oh, wait, this one will sound really good, that's where you know you're going into an area of worth and is what's better. But like, you know, really truly letting the meditative subconscious mind come through when you write, to me, is where the magic is. And it's really, really it's like a mental grounding. It's a clean out. It's like Jen said, it's this beautiful, you know, arriving back to yourself. So yeah, so you can, if you Google that poem, you'll be able to find a copy of it if you want, and you can just, you know, write for 10, 15 minutes. If you want to share with me, great. I'm gonna probably just tell you I love it. Yeah.
Does anybody else have any questions they'd like to ask before we give contact information, etc.? No? Any final thoughts there, Julie?
Well, just gratitude for you. Thank you for putting this together and for building this really lovely community. I can see that you've created a really safe and kind and wonderful space. And thanks to all of you for showing up. I think it's, you know, the more we can connect at this level and in this kind of space, the better for our hearts and for the whole world. And also I think too, you know, the more we make, the more we create, the more we build something from nothing, the better off we are. We're so in this consumer, take, you know, buy culture. And I think it drains us. So, you know, make a little something every day, even if it's just a doodle, even if it's a dish, if it's a cup of coffee, you know, make something, create something that wasn't there. And there's a spark of humanity in that I think, you know, we're losing a little, especially in the States. So
Yeah. 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 I'm gonna get my little baby boy and show him,
oh,
introduce him.
all right.
This is
Oh,
Lucky, who's
hi.
now my poetry poodle.
Oh, I love it. A
But
puppy
I
poodle.
had a soulmate, Lamb Chop.
Oh, really?
Oh,
Lamb Chop, I was in love with
Yeah,
Lamb Chop. I didn't just love him, I was in love with Lamb Chop,
yeah.
and broke my heart when he died. And he too, well, he comes with me to all. I'm a women's. I've gone from healing to service, and in my unworthiness and all of my healing, I have become an empowerment leader for women.
Yeah.
So basically, this is just my healing journey. But Lamb Chop, yes, it said to continue to do it. So I have this little setup, little altar wherever I go. It's this little thing over here because he's with me in it. Won't you know? And this is why I love these communities, Joanne, because you can say stuff that sounds wacky to a lot of people, but not in these real communities.
doesn't matter.
Lamb Chop sent Lucky, because Lamb Chop was a little white miniature poodle too. Lamb Chop sent Lucky on my 60th birthday. He's a rescue poodle. He showed up in my life on my 60th birthday. So we just celebrated our year anniversary because I just turned 61. But white poodle, almost, you know, so many resemblances, not Lamb Chop.
Mm.
Although
Yeah.
he's getting close. He's getting close. So we can go to juliebarton.com, juliebarton.com. You should be able to find everything from there. Substack, our daily poem is juliebarton.substack.com. Her book, memoir, Dog Medicine, is at bookshop.org or wherever you get your books. We will send out this information tomorrow and more in the follow-up email along with the replay link. Julie, thank you. Thank you so much for your tenderness, your truth, the way you remind us that healing can come in so many forms, even with soft pause and daily poems. Thank you,
you so
everyone,
much.
for
Thank
listening.
you
Thank
all
you
for
for
being
being
here.
Thank
here.
you.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Look
Thank you
forward to
all
hearing.
so very much. In deep
Thank
and
you.
honest gratitude. Namaste.
Namaste.
Namaste. Bye,
Thank you.
everyone.
Bye. Thank you.